Part 118. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1171. If Fu Nanli dared to doubt her so much before things were clear, then she would definitely be stronger than Zhao Xia. Fu Nanli. Why does everything have to involve me? Ren Qiao really regretted it and sighed repeatedly. I was really wrong. How could I have imagined that the hospital made a mistake? I was so angry at the time. He said and gave himself a slap. Wen Qiao added, tomorrow we will help you find out where your biological son is. As for Nian, I also want it every year. Wen Qiao's expression was complicated. That's not a question of whether you want it or not. It also depends on the other family. If you don't doubt your wife, you may just make mistakes and live your whole life without knowing anything. What else can Ren Qiao say? It's true. The more you know, the less happy you are. Your son has already developed feelings. If you don't know that there is a biological son outside, you can just live happily and happily. Where can you go? What about so many other things? It was his fault that he was not firm in his stance. When someone provoked him, he quarreled with his wife. In the end, the matter was exposed, and he couldn't bear to let it go every year. All the way back to the village, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Ren Qiao took his son home, and Wen Qiao and the others returned to the guest house. Exhausted, they each went back to their rooms. Fu Nanli almost did all the washing and other tasks, and finally went to bed with him in his arms. Although he was tired, Wen Qiao felt sleepy. This matter has become complicated. Fu Nanli didn't feel any psychological burden. I don't know what you are worried about. I'm just afraid that it's difficult to communicate with Nianyan's biological parents, or that Zhao Xia and the others won't be able to let go. Hey, I find it quite annoying anyway. Fu Nanli held her in his arms and stroked her back. A person like you is probably not suitable to be a lawyer. Wen Qiao turned his head and looked at him. Why did you say this? When you encounter something, it is too easy to empathize with others. You cannot separate yourself and look at the matter from the perspective of a bystander. In fact, all of this is not directly related to you. Even without you, this matter things have to be resolved. You are just a tool in this matter. You are too emotional and it doesn't actually make any sense. The plot has to go, so it's better to just be an NPC without emotions. Wen Qiao moved closer to his arms. What you said makes sense. Fu Nanli was a rational person after all, and he solved her confusion in a few words. This matter exists in itself. In fact, it has little to do with her. She can solve it as she wants. No matter how worried she is, things will still go on. This means that there is nothing wrong in the world, and people are bothering themselves. Been taught a lesson. Fu Nanli smiled softly. It's good if you can figure it out. After saying that, he lowered his head to kiss her. Wen Qiao was timid. I'm tired, brother. I don't do anything, just kiss you. Knowing that she was running around these days and worried about the Ren family, Fu Nanli didn't embarrass her. The most important thing was that it was really quiet at night and she would have to get up early tomorrow, so he didn't bother her. Wen Qiao, who had been enlightened by Fu Nanli, slept well that night. She got up at 7 o'clock in the morning. After breakfast, she ran to Ren's house to take a look. The two siblings were having breakfast. It was Ren Qiao who made it. He was back to being the charitable father, but Ren Nian still seemed to be afraid. He was afraid, but fortunately he kissed his sister, and after breakfast, he was led by her sister to go to school. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1172. Ren Qiao seemed to be cooking some soup, packed it in an insulated lunch box, and was about to go out on his electric bike. "What are you going to do?" "Look, see my wife." Wen Qiao smiled, "Go ahead." As soon as Ren Chao left, Mrs. Feng came out. Wen Qiao rolled her eyes and said, "Sister, we should not divorce anymore. You can go wherever you want to cool off. Why are you always thinking about other people's men?" Feng's face turned blue with anger. "You are such a nosy." Wen Qiao was too lazy to pay attention to her, so he went down the mountain with Uncle Fu Nanli. "What I need to do today is to go to the maternal and child health hospital to find out which child Ren Nianian was given to the wrong child back then. This nurse is really damned. She could actually make a mistake on such an important matter. If she hadn't discovered it, she might have changed the fate of the two children." Fu Nanli had someone contact the hospital beforehand. Coincidentally, Su Ce was also contacted. One is a business tycoon, and the other is a medical tycoon. The hospital director and senior executives have been waiting at the door for a long time. It is unknown what wind brought these two tycoons here at the same time. In the dean's office, Su Ce stated his intention to come. As soon as he finished speaking, the dean broke into a cold sweat. The child was held in the wrong arms, and the two giant Buddhas were disturbed. If this caused trouble, he would not be able to keep his title as the dean. When asked, he was told that it was from 5 years ago. The dean was relieved. He had only been here for 3 years. What happened 5 years ago was not his responsibility, but it was his duty to find out about it. "Mr. Fu, Professor Su, don't worry, I will definitely find out and give you an explanation." Wen Qiao. "Do you think her opinion doesn't matter? The two bosses shine so brightly that she is also called a little transparent. It feels like she is very powerful now, but it seems she still has a long way to go." A few people were sitting in the dean's office waiting. The people below had already been in chaos. This was a big deal, and alerting the big shots made the matter even more serious. Although I don't know what the relationship between the wrong child and these big shots is, no one below dares not to take it seriously. Fortunately, it was only 5 years ago, not long ago, so the investigation was not complicated, and it was found out quickly. The nurse at the time, named Wang Wen, had just come in and was in a hurry to put the wrong bracelet on the child. Children are always the same when they are born, so it is so wrong. The nurse named Wang Wen turned pale with fright, and she and the head nurse carried the information into the dean's office. The dean was furious and first taught them both a lesson. Wang Wen burst into tears and said sorry repeatedly. Wen Qiao said nothing. Su Ce took the file and asked, "Where is the other child now? Is he also in Hangzhou?" Wang Wen choked and talked about the situation of the other child. Wen Qiao frowned when he heard this. The other child was the biological son of Ren Chao and Zhao Xia. The family that took him away was a little complicated, but the only good thing was that this family was also in Hangzhou. The hospital gave the address, and the group of them immediately rushed to that house. Ren Chao was sitting in Fu Nanli's car. He was just a rough guy. He had no idea about luxury cars. He just thought this car was very spacious and spacious. The other young master was a bit unsmiling. He was usually fine. Now he was sitting in the car. In the same car, I felt very stressed and did not dare to speak easily. This period is coming to an end soon, and it's going well. On the last day of May, I'd better ask for your monthly vote. Don't forget to vote, little cuties, I love you. Thanks to everyone for the rewards, the plum blossoms, the blooming summer flowers, Fred Bartley's light, the distance between angels. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1173. After driving for 40 minutes, we found the family in a small town west of Hangzhou. According to the address, we found the family. It was a small storefront facing the street, selling children's clothing. It was noon and there was no one around. There was a child sitting on a rocking car outside the store, expressionless, rocking and playing by himself, with no adult around. Suddenly an adult inside shouted, "It's lunch, Zhang Xiaoqiu, why don't you come in?" The little boy named Zhang Xiaoqiu got out of the car and waited for a while when he saw a fat woman running over, grabbing the little boy's ears and saying fiercely, "Didn't you hear me tell you to eat?" The little boy pursed his lips and did not dare to cry, as if he knew he would be beaten if he cried. The boy was about the same age as Ren Nian, and Ren Chao could see that the little boy was somewhat similar to him and Zhao Xia. His eyes immediately turned red, and he seemed to be timid about being close to home, and for a while he didn't dare to go to bed. Forward. Only Wen Qiao here can bite the bullet. After all, she is the only girl and the hope of the whole village. She stepped forward and said to the woman as calmly as possible, "Is this Zhang Susu's home?" Wen Qiao originally thought that the fat woman was Zhang Susu, but he didn't expect that when the fat woman heard the name, she seemed to get angry. She kicked Zhang Xiaoqiu on the butt and glared at Wen Qiao, "What the hell are you doing here?" Wen Qiao was surprised, "Where is her mother? Can she come out? I have something to discuss with her." Yao Fen saw that the girl was pretty, and there were several handsome men behind her who were all dressed in expensive clothes. Although she was from a small town, she also knew that these men must be rich. His mother? His mother never comes home all year round. Wen Qiao's heart skipped a beat, and after asking around, she found out that Zhang Xiaoqiu's mother, Zhang Susu, was only 22 years old this year. She gave birth to Zhang Xiaoqiu out of wedlock when she was 17, and she didn't even know who the child's father was. Zhang Susu was also a person with no sense of responsibility, so she left the child with her brother and sister-in-law, the child's uncle and aunt, and went to work elsewhere. Even though he said he was working part-time, he usually didn't send any money back at all. The uncle is okay with the child, but the aunt is not related by blood to the child. She is getting more and more tired of having a drunkard eating at home for nothing, so she is usually very harsh on the child. Ren Chao almost cried after hearing this. He told Yao Fen about the situation and asked her to ask the child's mother to come back quickly and discuss how to do this. It was impossible for Yao Fen to have feelings for the child. When he heard this, he just wished that Ren Chao would take the child away quickly. But she was not the child's mother. She didn't care, so she quickly called Zhang Susu to come back. Zhang Susu is also a person who does not stingy. After all, she has been away for the past 5 years and sometimes does not come back during the new year. When she suddenly heard that her son was not hers, she was not so excited. She only said she would be back in 2 days. Ren Chao glanced at the child reluctantly, and then went back with Wen Qiao and the others. Now Wen Qiao and the others no longer lived in the mountains, but found a hotel to stay in Ren Chao's town. There were no people in the town at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, and the shops were closed. Wen Qiao came out after taking a shower and saw that Fu Nanli's face was not good looking. When he looked again, her brother-in-law and number 3 were in their room. Su Ce also held a deck of playing cards in his hand and said, "Play cards." Fu Nanli. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1174. Do you think I want to play cards? But when this uncle, who is the same age as him, talks about playing cards, he is not in a good position to offend others. The 4 of them sat at the small round table and started playing cards. The score was 80 points. These 4 people are all very smart, and one is a robot. Counting cards is a piece of cake. The masters compete with each other, which makes Wen Qiao feel like he can't stop. You couldn't see the expression on Fu Nanli's face that he wanted to end it, and he kept playing until 11 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. Fu Nanli felt a faint flame rising above his head. Finally, he looked at his watch and said, "It's getting late. Qiao should go to bed." Wen Qiao was in high spirits. "I'm not sleepy." Fu Nanli covered her mouth. "I have something to do tomorrow, you should be sleepy." Su Ce also saw that it was getting late, so he left with number 3. Wen Qiao put away the playing cards and seemed to be still sleepy. He chatted with Fu Nanli and said, "That Zhang Xiaoqiu is so pitiful." Fu Nanli, at this time, in the dead of night, on the small bed in the hotel, "This is not what your boyfriend wants to talk about, thank you." But Wen Qiao couldn't see it and was still analyzing. "Do you think it is possible for Ren Qiao to raise both boys? I think this is the best of both worlds. Ren Qiao and Zhao Xia are actually quite good. For Ren Nian also has feelings. If Ren Nian returns to that kind of family, he will be very cruel to the child. That biological mother is really not a responsible person, and his aunt cannot be kind to him." Fu Nanli turned over and pressed forward. "Wen Qiao, are you still in the mood to talk about this?" There was nothing going on the next day. Zhang Susu said she would come back tomorrow. Wen Qiao called the teacher and continued to ask for leave, saying that he would not be able to go back for another 2 or 3 days. Her grades have always been excellent, unlike Su Lu, whose grades and level have plummeted, so the teacher has no objection to her taking a long leave. The weather was cool. Wen Qiao and the others had a leisurely breakfast and went to the hospital to visit Zhao Xia. Zhao Xia has recovered well. At this moment, Ren Qiao was stopped outside the ward. Zhao Xia's 2 brothers didn't want Ren Qiao to get close to Zhao Xia anymore. Ren Qiao was carrying an insulated lunchbox and was so anxious that he kept calling his uncle and uncle. The 3 of them almost started fighting. The nurse came over and said this was a hospital. What was the yelling about? The 3 of them took a break. Zhao Xia's voice came from inside, "Let him in." Wen Qiao also went in together. Ren Qiao felt a lot haggard. The amount of information in the past 2 days was too much for him, and he was in a very complicated mood for a while. Zhao Xia asked Ren Qiao about the situation of the other child. Ren Qiao's eyes were red. When he explained the situation, Zhao Xia couldn't help crying. Although it was the hospital's fault that the child was held in the wrong child, the biological parents would definitely feel uncomfortable if their biological son was living a dependent life in someone else's home. "But every year, I can't bear to let it go." Zhao Xia's tears rolled down like broken beads. Ren Qiao sighed. "The child's mother will probably come back tomorrow. She was born out of wedlock, and the child has not registered yet. Do you have any objections to us raising these 2 children?" Zhao Xia couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. "Raise him for us? Don't you want a divorce?" Ren Qiao was anxious. "I never said I wanted a divorce, I just... You just suspect that I am having an affair with another man." Ren Qiao was speechless and at a loss for words, so he just kept saying sorry. Wen Qiao asked her, "Then do you want to divorce him? On the first day of June, I wish all my friends and children a happy holiday. Please give me a monthly pass / amazed face / Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me." Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1175. This matter is complicated, and after listening to Fu Nanli's words, she has tried her best to put herself as an objective bystander. If she doesn't get involved, it depends on what Zhao Xia thinks. Zhao Xia fell silent, and Ren Qiao became anxious. "I was wrong, I'm sorry, you don't care how you scold me, but let's live a good life in the future, okay?" Zhao Xia glanced at him. "Think about the child first, we will talk about it later." Wen Qiao observed them and also thought about himself. If he was questioned in this way, it would be unfair to Fu Nanli to think so. It was impossible for Fu Nanli to question her when something like this happened. Even when she was a little liar before, he never minded, and he suddenly felt guilty and felt sorry for Fu Nanli. Go back tonight and make it up to him. It started to rain in the evening, and they had dinner at a hot pot restaurant opposite the hotel. They didn't need to eat on the third, so they took care of Wen Qiao the whole time. They didn't notice that Master Fu's face was ashen. Is your boyfriend dead? Is it your turn to take care of me? Number 3 has no eyesight. After all, it is a robot created by Suci. Does it have emotional intelligence? Non-existent. Fu Nanli looked at him frequently, and he became even more energetic. Wen Qiao's hand was placed under the table when it was suddenly held by Fu Nanli. He held it so hard that Wen Qiao felt his bones crack. What? Fu Nanli held his forehead and said, forget it, go back to the room and settle the accounts with her. He really wouldn't be angry with the robot. After finishing the meal, they all had some smell on them. Fu Nanli felt down to earth in this foreign land. He returned to the hotel, took a shower, and sat by the window listening to the rain and waiting for Wen Qiao. After a while, the bathroom door opened. When he saw her coming out, Fu Nanli raised his eyebrows slightly. What do you mean? Wen Qiao walked over and said in a soft voice, aren't you unhappy when number 3 gave me some vegetables and bone dishes just now? He just climbed on top of him, taking the initiative. Possessiveness flashed in Fu Nanli's eyes, his Adam's apple slipped, and he held her waist. So you still know? I thought you didn't know, so why did you let him? He is a robot specially made for me by my uncle. His mission is to take care of me. You can't let him lose the only meaning of his existence. He is a robot, and he doesn't have any emotions or desires. If you really treat him coldly, he won't feel any sense of loss. That being said, if I did that, wouldn't I be disrespecting my brother-in-law? Fu Nanli has a headache. The robot can be ignored, but his uncle's face cannot be refuted. Although he is the same age, he is really his elder. Really terrible. Wen Qiao deliberately made up for him tonight, and the eldest young master was naturally happy to see the result, but he was not polite to her. The result was that his legs were very sore the next day. The next afternoon, I saw the single mother Jiang Susu. Her eyebrows and eyes were indeed similar to Ren Nian Nian. Although she was 1 year older than Wen Qiao, she was dressed in a very non-mainstream style, with grey-blue hair tied up. She had a crooked ponytail, big earrings, ripped jeans, heavy makeup, and the smell of perfume on her body was also very pungent. Wrong hug, Jiang Susu looked unconcerned. After all, she didn't raise Jiang Xiaoqiu. She was still young when she gave birth to the child, so it was strange that she could have feelings. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1176. Ren Qiao said seriously, I hugged you wrongly, sister. I heard that you don't want this child either. Look at this, I will raise both children. What do you think? No more beating around the bush. Ren Qiao and Zhao Xia genuinely care about their children. It stands to reason that this Jiang Susu didn't want to raise a child in the first place. She left the child to her brother and sister-in-law. She should be happy when someone stepped forward to raise the child for her. For her, the child is a burden. But this girl has been around outside for a long time, and she has developed a certain degree of insight. She could see that the people behind Ren Qiao were very rich, so she felt that this could be a great deal. Then give your child to you, and give my child to me. That's all. Wen Qiao frowned. How could Jiang Susu really want to raise a child? I'm afraid. Ren Chao was a little anxious. Sister, haven't you always kept Xiaoqiu's child at your brother's house to raise? You alone can't register the child, and you can't raise him well every year. 2. The child is raised in my house, and you can visit him at any time. Isn't this better? At least they won't dislike the children like her brother and sister-in-law. Although the family may not be very wealthy, they will try their best to give the children the best. Jiang Susu has the aura of a young gangster. I heard that she works in a computer accessories factory in the south. She earns 3 to 5,000 yuan a month. She is a moonlight family and will never send money back to her son. Her sister-in-law has grievances, which is considered fair. Can be forgiven. Jiang Susu snorted, that's not okay. It's my son after all. How can I just give it to you? Everyone should return to their place. My son belongs to me, and your son belongs to you. In addition, the hospital must compensate. Wen Qiao lowered his eyes. Jiang Susu must have found someone when he came back, so he understood quite well. However, the hospital should compensate. If you just stay with her every year, how can you survive? Even if the hospital pays hundreds of thousands, it will probably be squandered by her soon. If you stay with her every year, you will be in trouble. How could Ren Chao be willing to do so? Ren Chao finally gave in. Then how can you give me 2 children to raise? Jiang Susu raised her eyebrows, as if she was talking about a topic she was interested in. She flicked her glittering nails. People say that raising a son will help you grow old. If I give this son to you, he will definitely not recognize me in the future. What to do when you get old? Wen Qiao sneered, asking for money blatantly. This girl is really unkind. Ren Chao is honest. I don't have much savings at home, but I can give you all the money lost by the hospital. Wen Qiao was a little touched. Although he misunderstood his wife, he was really a good father. The hospital could compensate about 3 to 5 million yuan. For a villager in a small village, this was considered a good amount. It was a big sum of money, and he gave it to me as soon as he said it, without any hesitation. Wen Qiao thought Jiang Susu was satisfied. After all, she is also a small town girl. With the money from both sides, she can buy an apartment in the town and run a small business. She didn't want a son in the first place. With so many benefits, isn't she still satisfied? Yes, people are really not satisfied. Because Jiang Susu has been to a big city and seen the big world, she can tell that the car parked in front of her brother and sister-in-law's store is a Bentley. A Bentley, she heard from their director, it cost tens of millions. What is the concept of tens of millions? Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1177. Although I don't know how this Ren Chao got to know such a wealthy group of people, Jiang Susu is not a vegetarian. She gave her son to someone else, and just spent hundreds of thousands to send her away. You give me 5 million, and these 2 children will be yours. Wen Qiao almost squirted. This sister really knows how to speak like a lion. How could she say 5 million? Ren Chao's face turned pale on the spot. 5 million, let alone taking it, he had never heard of such a big sum of money. Sister, you're just asking a ridiculous price. My family is from the village, and I won't be able to get that much money if you sell me. Jiang Susu seemed confident. Then why do we have 2 sons? Wen Qiao frowned. As for attacking people like this? Although Ren Chao doesn't have much money, he is very responsible for his children. Ren Chao was dejected, and Jiang Susu said in a sharp voice, okay, let's go to the maternity and children's hospital tomorrow to talk about compensation, and then we can all go back to our places. Money, 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 it seemed that only money was left in her eyes. Ren Chao seemed to still want to talk, but Wen Qiao grabbed him and hinted that he didn't need to talk anymore. Since we can't reach an agreement, let's forget it. Wen Qiao said this and pulled Ren Qiao away. This time Jiang Susu was nervous. Is the price she offered too high? If the negotiation really breaks down, she won't get the money and will have to support such a dragster. She said in the factory that she is single and there are people pursuing her. If she had such a dragster, she would never be able to get married in her life. Jiang Susu fell into a fierce struggle. In the car, Ren Qiao's eyes were still red. Can we just leave like this? If she really wants to support her every year, I don't think this girl is reliable. I'm afraid she will be useless if I give her every year. Nian is a very smart and sensible child. Wen Qiao patted his shoulder. If you continue to talk to her, it will only make her sit down and raise the price even more. Don't worry, it's a fact that she doesn't want to raise a child. She shouldn't be allowed to ask for high prices and treat her coldly for 2 days. She will take the initiative to find you. Ren Qiao was concerned and confused. He was not at ease. Is it really possible? Believe me, I will let you raise 2 children in the end. The next day, the 2 families went to the maternal and child hospital, and Zhao Xia also came with her. Wen Qiao had warned her in advance not to show too much reluctance to part with the child in front of Jiang Susu. Now Jiang Susu and I were worried. The hospital said it would pay 500,000 yuan, and each family would pay 500,000 yuan. This money was enough to buy an apartment in the town, but she couldn't do anything. Jiang Susu suddenly knew this, and her ambitions grew. 500,000 couldn't satisfy her at all. Even if Ren Qiao's family gave her 500,000 yuan, she was still not satisfied. With 500,000 to buy a house and another 500,000 to open a store, she would have no money left. That won't work. She has to make a fortune on those rich people. If 5 million is not enough, then 2 million. The minimum cannot be less than 1 million. With this million, she can have a house in this small town. If you have money, you won't have to worry about anything in your life. The hospital sincerely apologized to them and the compensation will be transferred to them soon. I just hope they don't make a fuss. The hospital's attitude was quite sincere. Ren Qiao didn't want to cause trouble, and he had nothing to cause trouble if he could find his biological son. Jiang Susu didn't want to make a fuss. She was afraid that if she made a fuss, she wouldn't be able to get the 500,000 yuan. For her, money was the most important thing. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me. The boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1178. After finishing at the hospital, the group of people walked out. Jiang Susu waited until Ren Qiao took the initiative to negotiate the price with her, and became a little worried. Could it be that Ren Qiao really didn't want another child? Did she really raise the price too high? Walking all the way outside the hospital, Wen Qiao held Ren Qiao's hand to reassure him and not to show any cowardice. Once he spoke, the initiative would be in Jiang Susu's hands. 5 million is just small money to Fu Nanli and her, but why would they use these 5 million to satisfy such a greedy person? Just as Ren Qiao was about to speak, Wen Qiao pinched his arm. The pain was so painful that he immediately stopped talking and got into the car. With a bang, the car door closed, and Wen Qiao and the others got into the car with cold faces, looking very unattainable. The luxury car slowly left in front of Jiang Susu. She suddenly became nervous and whispered to her brother and sister-in-law, "Are they really unwilling to pay 5 million? Her brother and sister-in-law rolled their eyes at her. "How dare you open your mouth like this? 5 million? How can you open your mouth like this?" Jiang Susu pointed at the Bentley. "Do you know what kind of car that is? I'm really ignorant. It's called a Bentley, and it costs tens of millions, okay? I drive 5 million, and I don't drive randomly." Her brother and sister-in-law glared at her. "That's not Ren Qiao's car. Can Ren Qiao pay 5 million? He's a tough guy." Jiang Susu was unwilling to give up. I always feel that those rich people have a special relationship with him, and they feel like they would pay this money for him. How is that possible? Do you think all rich people are fools? Then why would they get together? Maybe Ren Xiao hired help from somewhere. Maybe there is someone at the hospital, and people with money can have power. If you really want to die, if we don't stop you, don't implicate us. Jiang Susu stamped her feet. Although she was unwilling to give in, what her brother and sister-in-law said seemed to make sense. In the car, Ren Xiao couldn't help but look back. Is this possible? What if she really insists on this price? Wen Qiao raised an eyebrow and looked at him. What if Jiang Susu really insists on this price? Ren Qiao suddenly fainted. What could he do? If it were 500,000, he could still give it, but if it were 200,000 to 300,000 more, he would probably work for Jiang Susu. But 5 million, to him, was an astronomical figure, something he would never be able to earn in a lifetime of hard work. To the number. Wen Qiao comforted him. If you keep her cold for a few days, Jiang Susu will definitely contact you. Isn't there still a 7-day deadline for returning their sons? You must calm down. Ren Xiao, okay, I believe you. Although this girl looks young, Ren Xiao somehow feels that she is very reliable. After returning home, Zhao Xia was also discharged from the hospital. Ren Xiao pulled her and hoped that she could live at home. Zhao Xia said with red eyes, my home is not here. Ren Xiao almost knelt down to her. I was really wrong. You can hit me and scold me, but the children can't live without you. Tian Tian and Nian Nian talk about you every day. Zhao Xia burst into tears. She couldn't let go of her child. She deliberately said with a straight face, ask my brother. If both of them agree, I will stay. Ren Xiao went to ask Zhao Da and Zhao Er, but the two brothers were still fierce. There is no door. Ren Xiao said sincerely, big brother and second brother, please hit me. It's all my fault. His eldest brother and second brother actually started beating him, but Ren Xiao was able to withstand it and let the two men beat him without saying a word. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me. The boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1179. Wen Qiao didn't say anything, and the pedestrians looked on. Zhao Xia, on the other hand, couldn't stand it anymore and started to start a fight. Forget it, big brother and second brother, if we continue fighting like this, something will happen. The final solution was for Zhao Xia to stay like this, but the two brothers-in-law warned Ren Xiao, if you dare to make her suffer again, our old Zhao family will beat you to death. Ren Xiao agreed, and the two brothers left. Zhao Xia glanced at Ren Xiao, look at your bruised nose and swollen face. How do you explain that the child is back? Ren Xiao smiled naively, I just said I fell down. For 3 days in a row, Ren Xiao followed Wen Qiao's instructions and did not take the initiative to contact Jiang Susu. Wen Qiao and the others stayed in a hotel in the small town, and they felt like mushrooms were about to grow. Fu Nanli even held a video conference in the small hotel room. Some senior executives in the spacious conference room opposite were shocked when they saw his office environment. I heard that the young master is on a business trip. The prince of the Fu family can only stay in an express hotel when he is on a business trip. This is too difficult. On the night of the third day, Wen Qiao received a call from Ren Xiao, saying that Jiang Susu finally talked to her. Wen Qiao asked Ren Xiao and the others to go to the small hotel to find them. 40 minutes later, Ren Xiao and Zhao Xia were in the small hotel room. Fu Nanli was sitting on the chair, and the couple just stood there. Wen Qiao looked around and glanced at Fu Nanli, how about you get up and let them sit? Fu Nanli. I can't even sit down? Am I so redundant? But when his girlfriend spoke, he couldn't help but listen, so he stood up. Ren Xiao said anxiously, Mr. Fu, please sit down. It's okay for us to stand. Zhao Xia also said, yes, yes, it's okay for us to stand. Fu Nanli sat down again. Wen Qiao raised his forehead and said, you can't really take your guest's courtesy seriously. Hurry up. Why are you so ignorant? The young master could only stand up again. Ren Qiao and Zhao Xia sat very uneasily. Ren Qiao, you said Zhang Susu was looking for you. How did she tell you? She said she wanted to talk to me. When? Tomorrow morning. Then how did you answer her? Ren Qiao said nervously, I said I would think about it. Wen Qiao nodded, well, your answer is very good. She should be panicking now. She will continue to call you tomorrow morning. You should come here early tomorrow morning. Okay. Remember, you have to pretend to be indifferent. The other one, tell Nian clearly. If this Zhang Susu is worse, she may say something to Nian and mess up your situation. Ren Qiao was so frightened that he broke into a sweat. Can she do this? If you see money, what can't she do? Early the next morning, Ren Qiao and his wife Zhao Xia came to the hotel early. Fu Nanli was deeply sleepy at that time, and was disturbed from his dream, but it was difficult for him to have an attack. After a while, Zhang Susu called and said that she wanted to meet. They each brought their children to get acquainted with each other first. Ren Qiao looked at Wen Qiao nodded, and Ren Qiao agreed to Zhang Susu's request. At noon, we met at a fast food restaurant in the city. Wen Qiao asked Qin Bai Qiao to stay for a while and followed the two families. Halfway through, Ren Qiao said he was going to the bathroom and asked Zhang Susu to keep an eye on the child. As soon as Ren Qiao left, Zhang Susu couldn't hold back anymore and said to Ren Nian, do you know? Your father doesn't want you anymore. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 1180. She said a lot, but she just liked Ren Qiao's soft-heartedness and wanted both children. Once this Ren started to have trouble with Ren Qiao every year, Ren Qiao would definitely not be able to bear it, and her chips would be even higher. Qin Bei immediately passed the news to Fu Nanli and Wen Qiao, who were sitting in the hotel opposite. Wen Qiao patted the table, how sinister people are. Does this Zhang Susu have no conscience at all? Ren Nian is her biological son, so she can only bear to hurt her son, just for a little money, without fear of any psychological shadow on her son. Fu Nanli looked contemptuous. If it weren't for Qiao Er, he might never have come into contact with such a person in his life. Over there, Zhang Susu said this, but Ren Nian just drank coke. It was completely beyond her expectation. This kid didn't talk like that either. Was he a fool? If you're a fool, then she can't take it anymore, as it will be a burden in the future. When Ren Qiao came out, Zhang Susu felt very guilty and said politely, brother, I think the relationship is almost done, so let's break up. Don't want to play anymore? I want to take the children to the amusement park in the afternoon. Zhang Susu waved her hand, forget it, let's talk about it next time. They dispersed with their children. After Zhang Susu left, Wen Qiao and the others drove to pick up Ren Qiao. Ren Qiao held Ren Nian's face, son, you did a great job. Ren Nian looked at Ren Qiao with big eyes, I know Baba will definitely not abandon me. Ren Qiao's eyes were red, and his voice was choked, yes, Dad will not let you go. After waiting for another 2 days, Zhang Susu was completely panicked. Ren Qiao hadn't come to her to negotiate the price yet, and even this trick was useless. Could it be that she would only be able to get 500,000 yuan in the end? How can that be done? So, Zhang Susu took the initiative to find Ren Qiao. When Xiao told Ren Xiao in advance that he would give all the $500,000 the hospital would pay to Jiang Susu, and don't even think about the extra penny, but he should be stronger. Ren Xiao and Jiang Susu met in a small restaurant. Wen Xiao was still opposite, using a telescope to observe. Fu Nanli chuckled, "I see how nervous you are you worried? If I give you an extra 1 million or 2 million, just treat it as charity." Wen Xiao glared at him, "Even if 1 million is thrown into the water, I can't give it to Jiang Susu." Fu Nanli shrugged, "Okay." When Jiang Susu over there heard that Ren Xiao could only give 500,000 yuan, she suddenly became angry. "Brother, why are you so unreasonable? I am giving it to you as an eldest son, 500,000 yuan. Ren Xiao also has a temper, you don't have to spend a penny on this son, and I will give you 500,000. You are still young, you can still get married, and you can have children. And you didn't plan to have a child in the first place." He ignored him and left the child to his brother and sister-in-law. "Just pretend that he didn't have this child. Now I can still give you 500,000, why don't you know how to be content?" Jiang Susu started crying, "Brother, you don't know. With my conditions, it's hard to say whether I can get married again. If I have my son by my side, it's a good thing that he is my son. At least he can still support me when I'm old, right, but now that I have given it to you, I have no guarantee at all. You have to be reasonable." Ren Xiao was speechless. "Do you raise your son just to support you in your old age?" Jiang Susu was confident, "Isn't that what they say when raising children to protect them from old age?